The goodness of our fortune this morning is etched against the background of many tidings of great suffering in our land, the thousands of families that have found it necessary to seek shelter in places of refuge that are not their own. For those who are filled with the desperation of known only to those who stand helplessly in the presence of suffering and anguish and needs which they cannot meet, against the background of the hunger of the world is the fullness of our stomachs. Against the background of the sickness of the world is our private experiences of health. We would remember the needy. This is so difficult to do. So very difficult. Grant, our Father, that the persistent pressure of thy needy children will tenderize our spirits and make soft our hearts, that each of us in his own way will find how to give expression to the impulse inspired by the movement of thy Spirit within us. This is the way we want to feel. This is the way we want to behave. Our Father, forgive us for our blindness. Forgive us for the hardness of heart. Forgive us for the arrogance of our comfort. Forgive us, O God, and grant that we may be so touched at the quiet place in our hearts and lives that we may even dare to give ourselves give ourselves our Father. Background for our thinking together as part 3 in our series. I want to read an interpretation written by a contemporary British poet. He calls it Joseph. He is a good lad, never given us any trouble, knows how to use plane and chisel, the different fields of wood. Since he could grasp a nail, he's helped me here, held planks for measuring and watched while I fashioned yokes and plows. He'll be a craftsman. He has the hands for it. Just 12. Next March, he'll come with us up to Jerusalem for the Passover. A man already, and only yesterday I built the cradle for him. Yes, time passes. He knows his books, the rabbi says, better than he does. That's his joke, of course. And cuts his letters in the sand as clear as any scholar. Friday's trumpet never bothers him, and Sabbaths he marches to the house of gathering like other boys to sport. You should see him sitting cross-legged among the scattered herbs, watching the readers' mouths, to taste the flavor of their words. Then the prophets, quite often he is chosen. Mayor is very proud then, and reads their thought as his. A ringing voice he has. Isaiah is his favorite. Now, out on the hills, if I know him, keeping the larks company. You'll see, he'll be in to breakfast with that dream on him, but cheerful and ready for work. Here he comes now. See how his eyes go first to the sacred scroll nailed to the doorpost. Good morning, lad. A friend to see us. Eli from Capernaum passing through to Caesarea. Your mother's bracelet, that was his, an excellent piece of workmanship. That timber? It came last night. Well, you must learn it sometime. Crosses, that's what it's for. At least the cross beams for them. We have to make them. Judas the Galilean and all his followers. The young fool, Eli, he raised a rebellion against the census. You heard about it. No king but God, their cry. 10,000 of them, and only 2 survived. Yes, they stormed the armory at Tiberias, seizing its weapons, but they stood no chance against the Romans. General Verus broke them like a dead branch, and then burnt Sepphoris. We saw the flames from here. Till morning, not a house, not a single house. Women and children shipped to slavery, and those remaining from the massacre now to be crucified. Yes, everyone, a hideous death. I'd sooner lose the money 20 times than be a party to it. But Roman orders, all carpenters within 10 miles. Poor, luckless fellows. Why did they do it? Why can't they understand that violence only breeds violence? That those who take the sword will perish by the sword. I know, but there are other ways to right men's wrongs than washing them in blood. God did not set us here on this little world to kill each other. I'm sure of that. He loves his children as I love Jesus here. We cannot serve him by actions he abhors, only by pursuing the work he made for us, farming or carpentry or what you will, by loving God and loving God in man. Coming, Mary. The other room, Eli. The meal is ready and I've talked long enough. Come, lad. Come. We'll pray for them, yes? And for all mankind wandering so far from God. We begin part 3 of our thinking together. As a preliminary statement to part 3, before I pick up the thread, it is important to bear in mind something that is so easy to forget, and that is that Jesus was a young man when he died. There's something so ancient about our experience in Christianity, ancient in the sense that it is old and familiar and traditional and bedded down, that we forget that Jesus was a young man. Even at the time of his death. And this fact, I think, had a great deal to do with a certain quality in his insight and in his mind and in his spirit. But bear that in mind as we are working along together. We begin then today with a continuation of the kind of content that there was in the religion which Jesus brought to the crucial issues of his time. It was pointed out that he inherited an experience of God that was indigenous to the life of Israel. God is the creator of existence. God is the king of the universe. That he is personal. His life is characterized by what was called the righteous will, and will implies action in time, and this action manifested itself in a series of mighty acts. One of these acts, of course, was the creation of the world. Another act was the creation of a community that would be responsive and sensitive to the will of the Creator as a community, so that there would be an instrument, a collective instrument, through which the righteous will might manifest itself. This was the raw material in the background of the thought and the experience which Jesus brought to the problems of his time. Now, of course, it is true that all of these others about whom we spoke last Sunday had the same inheritance. This was the inheritance of the zealot. This was the inheritance of the Sadducee. This was the inheritance of the Pharisee and the Herodian and the Essene. But in Jesus, something else seems to be at work, something additional, and I will see if I can put it into some form, some words. To Jesus, far more important than the fact that he was a Jew living as a part of the Jewish community in the Greco-Roman world, more important than all of the problems and the issues that stemmed out of the fact that he was a member of this minority with its back against the wall in a heathen, from their point of view, world. Far more important than all of these things was something else. And this is the wonderful thing about this strange man. To him, God was primary. Now let's linger over that a little. And if we can settle ourselves into his point of view, then perhaps we can understand the meaning of what he undertook in the world, whether we agree with it or not, whether we like it or not. That too is irrelevant at the moment. God is primary. That is to say, every question, every practical consideration, every issue of his life, with reference to the issue or the question, he raised a further question. And that question was, what is the will of God concerning this? Now, we can see how daring this is. When you are thinking about doing something, an act of some sort, and you raise a question about it, is the first question you raise concerning an act that you are contemplating as to whether or not the act is right or wrong? It is apt not to be that kind of question. The question that we usually raise is, first, before we get over to this other one, what bearing will this act have on the things that to me are important? One, what people will say about me. If I act this way, will they say yea or nay? And my emotional security is somehow contingent upon the degree to which they are willing to say yea to me. What bearing will this act have on where I want to land in terms of status, in terms of position, in terms of set goals that I have for the fulfillment of my life? What bearing will it have on the security of my children? on whether or not they will be able to continue living in the manner that they are accustomed to live. I remember years ago, I went into a shoe store in Rochester, New York, obviously to get a pair of shoes. And I asked this clerk to get me a pair of black Oxfords. And he said, "What size do you wear?" Oh, I said, 10.5. And he took my shoe off and put that measuring rod under it, and then he disappeared. And he brought a pair of black Oxfords that fitted me, and they looked all right. So I paid him, and when he brought the box back, I lingered for a minute because it was one of those awful days in Rochester, the days in which the sun dies. The days that remind you of a grown man at the funeral of a friend, and he wants to cry and can't. It's that kind of day. And it was slushy outside in addition, and this man said to me, "This is an awful job that I have." And I said, "It seems pretty soft to me. You walk around all dressed up, and you have a flower in your button, and it's comfortable in here." Oh, he said, "I don't mean that." But he said, "You see, I'm not permitted. It's against store policy to let anybody know the size of their feet." And he said, "I just get tired of lying about this." So I said, "Well, you don't have to lie to me about it. What size did you sell me?" He said, 11.5. No, but he said, "Every time I am tempted to get into the kind of work that will be an expression of my own sense of values, I remember my little boy and my wife and my mother, all of whom are dependent upon me for this kind of income that I'm getting." Now this is the consideration. It is for this reason, you see, that men who undertake to say, with reference to Jesus, that I am perfectly willing to accept his ethic, his moral teachings, his precepts, but I cannot abide his religion, misinterpret the genius of the man. For always the question that he raised was not, how expedient is this? What bearing will it have on some specious end that I have set for myself? But what is the will of God? And it is important to hold in mind when such a question is raised that for him this was not a matter of philosophical or metaphysical speculation. He started in his experience with God as primary fact, as a matter of fact, as God as the only authentic fact in existence. And everything else derived its meaning, its significance, its relevancy, its purposes from this central fact. Now, that means, you see, as down the road when we are spelling out the bill of particulars with reference to the poor and the disinherited, we will see how radical this is. For it suggests, you see, that the question prior to the political question, the question prior to physical survival, the question prior to all experiences is, what is the will of God? Now, this means then that if we look carefully into his life, we will discover that because of his experience of God as he felt it and thought of such experience, it led him to certain very important and significant conclusions with reference to the meaning of life. For instance, he did not accept the dichotomy or the dualism between God as just and God as kind. For instance, there is a time when justice outweighs all other considerations, and that therefore the justice of God is the most bedrock quality, because it means that there is an integrity in the very nature of existence upon which the human spirit and all living things may depend, and that in the last analysis, this integrity will not be betrayed because God, the creator of life and existence, is just. Now, Jesus put another word there and created a great deal of confusion. He said, God is just and kind. Now, he says that because he is kind, now listen carefully and think about it. Because he is kind, he can be trusted. Not because he's just, he can be trusted, but because he's kind. Now, so kind is he. So kind is he that he causes his rain to fall on the good man and the bad man. He lets his sun shine on the just man and the unjust man. He is concerned about the sparrow that falls on the wayside, about the leprosy in the leper, the blindness in the eyes of the blind, the madness in the mind of the deranged. His kindness reaches in, touches, makes whole, identifies with, and this can be trusted. This can be trusted. Now he takes it a step further. As time goes, he insists that how the individual then relates to God is very important. For the insistence is upon the inner will, the inner desire, the the inner intent. So that morality then springs from a new basis. It springs from the inward parts of the individual who is performing the act. Even a good deed from which the doer has inner detachment, which good deed fulfills itself in perfection and in healing and in redemption in the world. This is not enough. The inner spirit of the individual must manifest itself in the integrity of the act. And even when he insists that by their fruits ye shall know them, included in the notion of fruit is the intent of the heart and the mind. This is radical desperation. For it says, you see, that I must relate to the actions of my life in the same way that God relates to actions in time and space. That out of an inner center must flow the deed. Therefore, we are back at the earlier point. I cannot raise the question then. If I do this particular thing, and no one knows it, no one knows really how I feel, but if I can make you feel that this is a good thing that I'm doing for you, isn't this all right? Isn't this all right? If I can detach myself so that I will be involved in but not affected by the act, isn't this all right? And he insists that God is primary, that we relate to him in the same way that we relate to the deeds of our lives in terms that are primary, that because God at long last can be trusted, I should keep my eyes on him rather than on the effect or the result here or here or here. When I was a boy, one of the ways by which I earned a part of what I called my living was teaching elderly ladies how to ride a bicycle. And I was quite expert at this, and I would ride along and have my hand on the post of the seat and talking, and now and then I would withdraw my hand. They would know that my hand was not there, and they would go on. But always one problem presented itself. Whenever a stone or or a root appeared in the road, then the lady who was learning to ride the bicycle would get tense. And she would say, "There's a rock." And I would say, "Yes, I see it, but don't you look at it. Because if you keep your eyes on it, you'll go straight over it. Look otherwhere. Look." Now this is what he's saying. Don't look at the stone in the road. Now, this sounds like Pollyanna, you know. We'll see how Pollyannish it is a little later on. Don't look at the root. Look at God, who is the creator of existence, of stones and roots. And either he can be trusted or he can't. If he cannot be trusted, then for life there is no meaning, and for existence there is no integrity. If he can be trusted. Trust him and see. Look at the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin, yet your heavenly Father takes care of them. Aren't ye worth more than these things? Don't watch Rome so hard. Don't let yourself be stampeded by the marching legions and the lecherous glances that they cast at the daughters of Israel. Don't lose your life trying to find it. And they thought him mad. They thought him a betrayer and a traitor. And to those who had their security rooted in the nature of the event, to them he was a traitor. And it is my sincere and profound conviction that this man is the great enemy of our civilization and our culture. And if his will, as he experienced it, becomes operative in our society, not a single stone will be left upon another. Our survival as a culture, I think, is contingent upon the degree to which we are able somehow to separate ourselves from his almighty insistence and his terrible religion. If we say yes to it, we shall become like him, the perfection which is God's, for which he strove, will be our striving. O Sabbath rest by Galilee, O calm of hills above, where Jesus knelt to share with thee the silence of eternity, interpreted by love. Drop thy still dews of quiet, till all our striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives